May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? Will all current students please stand up? I repeat, will all current students please stand up? I think we're going to have a problem here. Now, before all you bust a move and get jiggy to that Eminem song, let me identify to you the actual problem we're going to have. Let me identify the actual issue we have going on. This issue applies to just shy of 50% of all post-secondary students, so follow along and learn about an issue that may very well even include you. I'm not talking about students having trouble finding an employer. I'm not talking about students failing out or dropping out of school. I'm talking about the real problem these days: student debt. Recent statistics have come to prove that just under 50% of secondary students in Canada pay their tuition through student loans. Now, with roughly 2 million post-secondary students in our country, this means that there's approximately 1 million of us who are currently using student loans to pay our way through school. It doesn't just end there. There are many adults now who are still even trying to pay off their student debt from over 5 and maybe even 10 years ago, which just goes to show the problem we have here in Canada regarding student debt. Some who don't know or don't have a full understanding of student debt may ask, what is it? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. Student debt derives from a student borrowing money from elsewhere and using it in order to fund and pay for their secondary education. Generally, these loans are used by students to pay for their tuition as well as their textbooks, their computer programs, or even online subscriptions. This all seems quite practical, of course, as it gives the opportunity to the less fortunate to be able to attain a post-secondary education. I mean, yeah, this gives them a chance to further their knowledge and hopefully open up higher job qualities and opportunities in the field in which they studied. But the student debt aspect revolves around all of these funds that are being borrowed by students, which are being expected to be paid back with a high level of interest within 10 years or so. So where's the issue, though, you might ask? I mean, paying 4 years of school shouldn't be that bad if I have 10 years to do it. But that's just the issue right there. It's way less simple than it seems. A recent study from an article in the Canadian Press states that students who take out student loans expect to have a $20,000 debt. $20,000. That's a down payment on a house. In the article, it explains that about half of post-secondary students take out student loans, and about 60% of them expect to owe over $20,000 upon graduation. I mean, this is just ridiculous. To make matters worse, the same study shows that about 21% of these students expect to graduate with over $40,000 of debt. This is just becoming insane now. Only about 44% of Canadian students with a debt believe that they'll be able to pay it off in 5 years. That's less than half. This means that the other half expects to take longer than that. It even gets worse in Eastern Canada, as the same study reveals that about 25% of students in Eastern provinces expect to owe over $40,000. And on top of that, only 30% of those students claim that they'll be able to even pay it off in the first years. Another study shows that 14 to 35% of post-secondary students are actually able to dip into a registered education savings plans that was set up by their parents. This goes to show the impact on personal financials that student debt really has. A main role in this issue is the government. As much as they claim they have installed practical student funding programs, the reality of it all is they really haven't. The government lacks funds themselves to lend out to students or even grant students with some sort of minor entry grant. To be straightforward, the government needs to even borrow money itself in order to pass it on to us students. That's where we get screwed. The government borrows its funds at approximately 3% interest and passes it all on to us students at anywhere ranging from 8 to 12%. And this is only going to get worse as time goes on. The government's budget deficit suggests that the type of funding like this will be more likely to fall than rise. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate for young adults in Canada is double the national rate. It's hard to become a functional player in the economy these days if a large portion of each paycheck goes towards your student loans. With tuition costs rising in the past decade and unemployment rising as well, this creates quite the dilemma for those trying to enroll in post-secondary education, and especially if they need to borrow funds to do so. In conclusion to the issue, I think it's safe to say that student debt has become quite the problem over the years. With tuition costs rising along with textbooks and programs, students these days are finding themselves at an all-time low in positions of financials. This needs to be resolved. The best advice I could give you future university or college students would be to save up your money and invest it into proper education savings accounts, or RESPs. The most important thing to do is stay a step ahead of the game. Plan out your repayment plan and stick to it. Hopefully it all works out in your best interest and you'll be on your road to success. Thank you very much for listening. It's been my pleasure.